For those of you that have read Fast Food Nation, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, that book was published and really focused on this community of Colorado Springs. Eric Schlosser, in fact, the author of that book, when he was growing up as a child, went to a camp up on the mountain. What's the name of that camp up there that up by Divide?
Shady Brook.
No.
Paramount Ridge, YMCA. Sanborn? Sanborn. And so as a child, Eric Schlosser fell in love with Colorado Springs and the mountains and the community around here. And so when he started thinking about the Fast Food Nation book, which I had the pleasure of getting to help him with, he really gave us a report on what Colorado Springs was and what it looked like. And Michael mentioned the globalization thing. And I hope in years down the road that we can look back on this time of corporate control globalization, this weird model of globalization that we've seemed to embrace in this country and want to spread it around the world, as the biggest folly ever in human history. I mean, and it's a bigger folly than Barbara Tuchman's examples of why did they pull the Trojan horse into Troy? Why do we put Walmarts in our communities? Why do we put extraction economics through Chamber of Commerce encouragement into our towns, in our cities, and watch the wealth leave? We are at ground zero, Colorado Springs, Colorado, for providing the example of how you fix it. How we offer a different alternative than globalization, where wealth is extracted and shipped out to corporate headquarters wherever they may be for investment in whatever they want to invest in rather than the community. So I'm excited about the idea of a public market, and I love this. I love this from the booth of the public market. When you put your being in the local business versus putting your being in the corporation,
you got to mix it up.
It's a really
other
big,
way around.
It's a really big difference. This is the corporate being. This is how much stays in the community when you shop at Walmart or buy a McDonald's hamburger, and this is how much goes into the community when you buy at a local business. And so this is just I think a really good visual of the difference. So let's talk about this. Let's do this public market, and let's figure out how to build it to where the community owns it. All of us own it together, and it's that place of excitement and energy and new ideas and funding for those new ideas and giving access to the marketplace for those farmers. You know, I tell people I get up every day trying to figure out how to increase income at the farm and ranch gate, the place where wealth is created, where the seed's put in the ground and you add the water and sunshine, and every year, as Ben Franklin said, in a continual miracle, wealth is created. And we've got that south of us in this Arkansas Valley. Let's connect that into this city and others as well, and really connect the consumer to the producer, and bring back some vitality and some prosperity to our community.
Thank you. Well, it is such a pleasure to be here. My name is Sabella Kraus. I am the executive director of an organization called SAGE, Sustainable Agriculture, Education, and Enterprise. And our primary focus is on land at the metropolitan edge, agricultural land, and making sure that stays in agricultural production and is tied into regional sustainability strategies. Previous to that, I was the executive director of the San Francisco Public Market Collaborative and the Center for Urban Education about Sustainable Agriculture, its related nonprofit, and we helped develop the San Francisco Public Market in San Francisco, a great place, a great example. Please come and visit if you haven't had a chance to visit. So shall I just dive in, or do you want to? Okay. So I was asked to just give a brief opening statement and just sort of talk about really sort of examples of things that are happening elsewhere that might be relevant here to help really affect the food shift that you're all imagining. So as you all know, that food shift goes through the full supply chain: production, processing, distribution, retail, and in all elements of that, we need to consider the waste stream, funding, education, and public engagement. So I just want to give a few examples at each of those levels of things that are going on that I think could be replicable or might be of interest in this community. So on the production side, for the last number of years, SAGE has had a beginning farmer and rancher grant with our local resource conservation district, we've really had a chance to look at this whole issue of how do you bring new farmers into the production subcycle when it's a challenge enough for existing farmers in many ways to get past some of the marginal returns that are there. So, I'd say our chief findings there are bringing those farmers together in community, especially the beginning farmers, are really important, and the beginning farmers with more experienced farmers. So one of the models that we have is something called an agricultural park, which is basically we get capital to create the infrastructure, water, fencing, management policies, et cetera, so that beginning farmers can come in with less of a capital burden. So the whole idea of incubator farms is something that we are calling ours ag parks, but incubator farms are happening really around the country, and there's a lot of support, a lot of very good examples, and a lot of good lessons learned. Another thing on the production side that we're working on is taking a whole region, so this is sort of scaling up the idea of ag parks into an urban edge agricultural preserve. So we're currently working in a valley, 7,500 acre valley just south of San Jose, which was going to be a new city for various reasons. It's not a new city now, or isn't that idea is sort of on hold, but maybe put off permanently. But we really need to purposefully redevelop that as an agricultural area. A lot of the infrastructure has left the area, and so how do you make that get going again? And I think a main focus there is we're looking at it as a multi-benefit area. It's very important. Also, as an ecological sort of wildlife corridor area, it's very important to contain the urban push out from San Jose. So it really is a potential area that can both contain and sustain cities. So I think one of the other things that we look at in the country and other examples in Europe and Asia is what are other expanding metropolitan regions doing about their urban edges to make sure that that agricultural land is not just has speculative land use and is just impermanent. You can't have agriculture investment in an area in land where there's just this impermanent syndrome. So I could go on for a while down the supply chain. I don't know if I should give a few more examples or.
Well, I think what we want to do is to have the questions come directed back to you or Mike or Michael as they get generated. Just a brief overview now, and then we'll get back to you real quick with some questions.
So come back with other elements of the supply chain.
Absolutely,
Okay.
thank you.
Killed that thing there. So I guess what I would add, so two big things that I've been thinking about with respect to the public market. First of all, I grew up in South Shore of Long Island, and in a place called North Massapequa, also known as Matza Pizza, because it was half Jews, half Italians. And we were a province of Grumman Aircraft. But right across the street from the Grumman Aircraft plant was what was called the farmer's market. Now, the farmer's market was not a farmer's market as we think of farmer's markets today. It was really more of a public market. But it really had maybe, 300-400 booths. And it was places where home-based businesses who could not set up a shop yet would sort of have their public face a couple of days a week. And it was really, as a kid, I found it really cool. I found it, there was a magician who was always performing tricks. There was a glass blower who was doing intricate animals. There were interesting things to taste there. It was a fun place to go. And I feel like, the problem that we have at conventional shopping malls now is they lack fun. Teenagers hang out at the malls, and my kids are becoming teenagers, and so this is their deadly attraction, is like there must be fun at the mall, and they don't find it, and then they create it in bad ways. But we could, I think a public market has the great opportunity of simultaneously being a meeting place, a place for youth to do things that are constructive, a place for home-based businesses to begin to make their next step into the economy, and a place for people to really meet their farmer and talk about the local food shift. So that brings me then to the second thing, and we were asked to comment on the local food shift. And I just want to say that there have been about 100 studies that have been done on local food systems, some in this state, all across the country. They basically all say the same thing. They all say you move to local food, you create a lot of jobs, a lot of tax dollars, but you have obstacles. And those obstacles include, how do you get consumers to buy more local more of the time? How do you get capital into local food businesses? How do you get the land that's needed for growing local food? How do you train up farmers to be the new local growers? And how do you get local food businesses to be more competitive? Without going through each of those, I will just say that the only two of those points that I think are really tough are land and capital. Land is only tough if you try to do it in just Colorado Springs. And there is always a regional solution to a local land problem. That is, as you get a city to work with, surrounding rural areas, then you can make this land issue work. Also, if you're willing to change your diet from, into a more modest use of heavily grain-dependent meats, that sometimes also enables you to be more localized. Capital, at the end of the day, is still the huge problem. That's why I dwelled on it in the last section, and why I hope we talk about it here.
Yeah, I can use this one. Well, thank you. Now, what I'd like to do is, Mike Callicrate has a vision for what this Colorado Springs public market will look like. And what I'd like him to do is briefly to share what it's going to look like, what he sees, and what others have on his committee and working with him as a partnership, so that we can all share that vision and then ask some questions to Sabella or to Michael or to Mike, and see if we can help move this dialogue around, because this, if we're getting a lot of public support for this. I mean, there's a lot of people that think this is a great idea. And Mike wants this to work just as much as a lot of us do as well. So, Mike, could you give us a kind of a picture? What is this market going to look like when we walk down there?
Well, Larry, it depends on the time of the year that you go. If it's in the summer, there's going to be a lot of farmers there, like you would see at an Avon farmers market, or up there at the Margarita currently, or at Ivywild currently. We'd have that outflow from the main structure during that season, to where you'd see a lot of farmers, a lot of activity, and a lot of various things outside. And then in the off season, what you'd see is a lot more of the winter things, like the squash and the potatoes and the apples, and the things that are available seasonally inside. But you'd also see a lot of value-added products. Year-round, you'd see a lot of value-added products, the jellies, the jams, the cheese. Wouldn't it be cool to have a cheese-making facility there, an approved facility that you could bring your goat milk in, and we could make cheese for the community, and you could look through the window and watch it being made? I'm talking about the Pike Place Market, aren't I? And you can also get a real cup of coffee in this market. Not a cup of coffee made from Robusta beans from an industrial production farm in Brazil that makes your stomach hurt, but one that doesn't make your stomach hurt. And you can smell the beans being roasted in this facility. You can also get a wonderful, as evening approaches, you may want a Bristol beer from his production facility inside the public market, which Mike Bristol thought last night might be a good idea, but he needs 2 years because of what he's done at Ivywild. So, but it's going to be a place where on a Saturday morning, I'm not sure what I want to do. I've slept in a little bit perhaps. Might have, like Dave Anderson, I might have slept in till 5 o'clock. and so I'm thinking I'm gonna go down, and I don't know what I'm even gonna do today. So I'm gonna run down to the public market. It's gonna be pretty busy at 7 a.m. probably. I'm gonna get that cup of coffee. I'm probably gonna grab something to eat from one of the local vendors, probably Luis's Burritos made with Callicrate beef, or perhaps Jay Frost's beef, or perhaps anybody else that has access to that marketplace, which is absolutely open to everyone. And then I'm gonna meet Sabella, and we're gonna talk about doing the incline. And-
Yeah.
Or maybe just doing a bike ride, around the community, and we're gonna spend some time, get to know each other better, just have some fun, stop at a few other places around, maybe stop by Ivy Wild, see what's going on there, on the bike path, and we're just gonna have fun. And we're gonna probably end up back at the public market sometime in the afternoon, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on, and then by evening, I'm probably gonna be having a glass of Colorado wine with a really nice choice of cheese selection. And I'm probably then going to have dinner at the Tapateria, who has just put a farm-to-table restaurant inside this place. And so it's going to be full of people. It's going to have a lot of energy. And then for my son's wedding reception, we're going to be there, in a couple of weeks having a nice party. Or it will have a lot of public space available. For all kinds of activities. But it's all about bringing community together. But at the same time, while we're having all this fun, we are going to be providing those farmers in the Arkansas Valley a living wage on a big scale, because this isn't just the public market that we see as a place to go buy stuff and eat and connect with other people, but it is a wholesale level place of distribution for produce, where those farmers can actually make a living on that land and stay on that farm if they want to stay on that farm. But it's also then going to provide a lot of outlet for those urban gardens, that greenhouse production that we're going to be working on here, Larry, going forward. So we have a lot more greens and year-round production within the community. But we're going to see the wealth that's created in the community stay in the community. And as opposed to what happens when you go to a Walmart or a King Soopers or a Safeway or something like that.
Well, that's great. It's a great overview. Sabella, do you have some comments?
Well, can I add to that vision?
Sure.
Okay, I love being there on Saturday morning. Now let's jump to Tuesday morning. It could be a little slower time in the market. So what's going to happen on Tuesday morning? Well, on Tuesday morning is going to be one of the days where kids from local elementary school comes. Every single elementary school is going to make a field trip to the public market at least once a year, every class. And they're going to be special sort of activities for them, meet the farmer. There's going to be a small cooking school there, at least a cooking station. Maybe that's operated by a business which is a food, a cooking implements business, whether it be Solatab or something far better, much local, a local business. There's going to be in the public facility room a place where the local food policy council is going to meet. And that local food policy council, do you have one here?
The beginnings.
The beginnings, that's great. So they meet there regularly, where the farmers and the investors and the local businesses all come together, and the agronomists to talk about what their plans are. There's going to be a small business there in San Francisco. We call it La Cocina, and it's a place where people who want to start small food businesses get training, both business training and how do you take this delicious pie you like to make at home and make it into a small business. Well, this is a soup to nuts a training place for people to do that. So it's a facility, it's training, there's training money, there's storage. When you start making your pies successfully, you need a place where you can store them and you can sell them out of. This is going to be also the center where a food carts business might originate. So for people who are not coming out into the public market to shop regularly, it can be a place where food carts go out to certain neighborhoods. This is what's happening currently in San Jose. It's an idea that came out of New York. It's bringing back the old food cart idea. There's also going to be activities, perhaps for seniors. On Thursday mornings, there's going to be a whole set of activities where seniors come out. There's special kind of cooking classes, nutrition things that are relevant. So I think, the idea is, how do you populate this all during the week for different kinds of audiences? So, and I think it also builds off the idea that Mike said, that there's a cheese making place, there's also a pasta making place. So how many of these businesses that maybe do most of their retail business on Saturday or on the weekends, how are they going to make it during the week? And I think having small scale processing is a really good idea as part of that mix.
Michael, do you have any, we're painting the picture right here, and you did a great job just before. Is there any other, strokes of paintbrushing you want to put to this vision?
The only other thing I was thinking about is, how about putting the Colorado Stock Exchange, you know, in a corner of the public market?
The stock pot.
Right.
Pull up the stock pot.
Stock market, you know, and I mean, you know, old style stock exchanges were always rich with people doing deal making. So some of the stock exchange could be virtual and some could be real. And I think, you know, making it a place where businesses and investors are encouraged to come and are fed well when they come there could be quite exciting.
You know, the big discussion that we've heard is how are we going to get fresh local produce to the market during the winter? Now, it may be a little premature to say this, but since Mike brought it up, I'm going to comment more on that. What if there was a model that we set up that could actually localize our food supply by capitalizing small greenhouse growing in people's backyards? Mike and company would capitalize that. The loan would be paid back by the produce that comes into the farmers, to the public market, and those folks could earn a living. They could actually be part of the food supply during those times. And we have shown, and Mike knows this, and Craig McHugh from A Joyful Noise Farm knows that you can build a small high hoop tunnel and actually recoup profit. You can start making profit halfway through that first season. So it's very doable, and we could get a lot of the local food grown locally, involve a lot of the local folks to come, because you know, they grow it, they're probably going to come down. So there's all this discussion. This is a vision here, and you can see that both Sabella and Michael and Mike are painting this picture, and it hasn't been thoroughly fixed yet. There are things that are going to happen there, but there's other things open. So comments or questions? Yes.
My question is in terms of the vision, what role does local currency play, and how can that be utilized, and maybe if there are other examples in other cities of how it's used in terms of trading within the marketplace itself?
So kind of local currency, maybe like a barter system, or like Manitou bucks, like Becky is involved with there with Transition Town and folks, that sort of thing. I'm going to start off by asking Mike first, and then he can defer to either Sabella or Michael on that.
I already defer to Mike.
Okay, defer to Michael.
Well, here's the thing about local currency. So local currency exists in many forms, you know, printed dollar bills, computerized systems called LETs, local exchange trading systems, people exchanging social service in time dollars. The key thing about local currency to understand is that it's valuable because Walmart would never accept it. That is, if your mission is to take money out of the community and bring it back to Bentonville, Arkansas, local currency is meaningless to you. But a local business that has currency, or a local service provider, will re-spend that money in the community. Local currency is really one of many, many tools that are used to encourage people to buy more local more of the time. Local debit cards, local credit cards, local loyalty cards, those are other kinds of tools out there. For example, in Portland, Oregon, there is a great loyalty card called Supportland. Several thousand people use it. When you every purchase you make at a local business gives you a discount on other purchases at other local businesses. In San Francisco, there's a neighborhood there called Bernal Heights. The local credit union there issues a local debit card called Bernal Bucks. It's not really a local currency, but like other debit cards, there's a percentage that comes back to the credit union as a fee on every transaction. This credit union, though, doesn't keep the fee. They give it to the local business group to teach people how to use the debit card with local businesses. So it's actually a very smart way of recycling money. I would just say, don't get too hung up on any one tool. I mean, some people think there's magic with money, magic with local currency. There isn't. Local currency is just one of many, many tools out there to induce people to buy more local more of the time. If that's what you're passionate about, give it a whirl, but look at the full range of alternatives.
Thanks, Michael. Question, yes.
Cleveland, Ohio, lived there 3 years. One of the jewels in Cleveland is called the Arcade Building downtown, and you can enter from one side, walk to the other, and see a variety of shops. And so I'm just trying to pick up on this market being this great big arcade centrally located. Another part of Cleveland was the Terminal Tower, where the rapid transit ties right into downtown from the airport, the east side, and so on. And so you were brought downtown easily.
So it became a hub, is what you're saying. You know, and Mike has talked about this. Mike, do you want to comment on what you think might happen as far as development around, because this is a good tie-in, from around the public market, what you envision we might see down there, which is basically kind of a blighted old business park.
Well, you know, where I would love to see this public market is at the old Chrissy Fowler location, the lumberyard down there. And that's a win-win deal because you address some blight and some decline in the community at the same time as you're building new and bringing energy and activity back to that area. The Milwaukee market is the one that caught my eye years ago when I went there. This was in the 3rd Ward of Milwaukee, which was the most rundown part of the city. Lots of crime, lots of problems, very blighted and dangerous area to go. And they built this public market, and 1,500 residential development built up around it fairly quickly. Restaurants popped up all around very, very quickly as well. It struggled for a few years. Now it's rolling big time and doing very well now that they've finally got everything together. It's fully publicly owned, a nonprofit base of ownership on that. But a tremendous amount of economic activity around it. And when I was there on that first Saturday morning that I went there, the buses, the Greyhound buses that were lined up down the street, I can't tell you how many blocks long, unloading people from the outskirts and the rural areas around Milwaukee. And they were getting off the bus with their canvas bags, walking into the market, and given a certain amount of time to be back on the sidewalk when the bus would return from its parking space and come back to pick them up. Well, I just hooked on to one of these groups that said they were going to take a tour. It was an elderly group, in fact, and I just went right along with them, and the manager of the market gave us the tour, so that was a really lucky thing for me to be able to see that commercial kitchen where they were making a lot of things, in fact, putting on a chef's demonstration that morning. It was pretty cool, but these people were so enthused, and those bags were so full when they walked out of there and got back on the bus and left. So a transportation issue was really addressed there. But depending on where this market is, you've got various things that can really help in the transportation issue. You know, we're talking about, what about putting a streetcar back out there again?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
Having some streetcar service going down there. There's, of course, in that immediate area, there's a good sized parking garage, but being able to walk and bike. What if you could sort of rebuild Bermejo from the downtown center and beautify it and narrow it and plant stuff along it, and then it ends up in America the Beautiful Park by way of a walking bridge that goes right by the public market. So you're tying in some really iconic features of our city together and bringing more people together. And heck, maybe we do end up with a ballpark in the area. Maybe we do end up with a science museum and an Olympic museum in the area, but you can really start to cluster a lot of things there around that public market. But I see the public market as being the real hub, the real center of activity that brings in residential development. I was there with Jan Weber. She's from Brooklyn, a filmmaker that does a lot of film work around farming and food. And so I'm showing her this Chrissy Fowler area, and she kind of does a 360, and she says, you know, Mike, for a city to be a city, people should live in it. And of course, she's seeing no people, no residences, and she's so right about that. So let's increase residential development inside the city, in the center of the city, and worry less about the grasslands out east. That should really stay grasslands, in my view.
Feed those cows.
Yes, for feeding some cows, yeah.
Sabella, do you have any comments on development that you might envision or have seen that might spring up around a public market?
Well, first of all, the picture you paint, this sounds like a city the young creatives want to move to. It sounds great, a place to live. So I think that's part of the trick. I mean, as I understand it, this is both to vitalize this area and sort of your broader food economy for the residents here, but also to get people who want to say, yeah, this is the place we want to come and move to. Well, I think that the residences are very important. A lot of studies will show that, you want that group of people sort of close enough in so that they use it not just for their periodic shopping, but could use it for their daily shopping. I think in other areas, there are activities that can happen after the market. I think, the arts districts, you see that as being something that can be put fairly close in. I think the multimodal transportation is also important. I think that you touched on a lot of them. So.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see, I think there was a question here, and then we'll go here and then there, okay? Yes?
My question is...
Okay, I'm sorry, and then we'll take you.
Okay.
That's good.
You just mentioned the arts district concept. This sounds like the public market best models are around food. Is there any component that does include art, crafts, culture within the public market, or is it best to have it be an option?
Is that one for you, Mike?
Isabel.
For Isabel, okay.
I think, a lot of farmers markets that I know go back and forth on this. I know farmers markets, for example, that say, well, there's no crafts whatsoever. This is a strictly food market, and fine, maybe in certain seasons it's going to shrink. And other markets say, we're going to allow a certain amount of craft because it sort of is another thing that keeps people in here. I think it's, my instinct would be to keep the food part of this really predominant. And, it may be that you could have some public markets, for example, have these day stalls. So maybe one of the day areas, maybe there's an area for local artisans as part of the day area, but that also should be curated, so it really is local artisans. But, it seems to me you want to keep a focus here really on the food as much as you can as the primary focus, then maybe it can have these additional elements to it.
Great, thank you. We've got about 5 more minutes left, so let's, we'll do some fast rounds of questions here. Yes?
I had a question for Savela. We have a large swath of urban edge on our east side that a lot of our community leaders and political leaders believe the best use is development, specifically housing development. What recommendations do you make for saving that for other uses so that it isn't developed in that particular method? What have you done that's been successful?
That's a big question. Well, in terms of whether it's good for agriculture, maybe that's part of the question there is, you'd obviously have to look at it, soils, water, that sort of thing. But that, I'd say that one can say no, whether you're saying no to development or no to having Starbucks on Main Street or whatever it is, but I think it's always more powerful to say yes, to say, we don't want development, but here is what we do want. So maybe at this point, nothing has to happen to that. I don't know the situation, obviously, well enough at all, but is it currently in agriculture or grasslands? But so I think having a vision for what something should be often can be more powerful than and you can galvanize people around that, can be stronger than just galvanizing people around what shouldn't be.
Thanks. We're going to take 1 or 2 more questions, and then I'd like each one of our panel members to do a summation and maybe some words that we can leave with. And I'm sure there's going to be time that we can gather and meet together, because it looks like this should have been about a 2-hour session here. Yeah. There, and then are you next? So we'll go you sir.
Okay. Instead of just doing families, could the schools in this area have the greenhouse support? If the kids learn it early on, they're going to want to grow it even more as they get older. The produce can pay for the materials, which would then seed a greenhouse at another school. That's a lot of hands-on experience for the kids, and you're developing long-term where you really want to be. Plus, you can tie in all of the STEM components that are now required by the state.
Well, we've got Christina back there, Christine Faith, and she's helping run the project over at Galileo. And we worked with that project We can talk to you privately on that, but there are concerns with the schools and the food service and everything else about food safety. So it's a great idea, but being a former educator and Christine being an educator, it's a great idea that needs a lot of work. But I'm sure she'd be willing to talk to you on some of the problems that she's encountered. And we'll finish up, and then we'll have a summation from each.
Okay, so this is for Larry and or Sabella, but my question would be, how do we, as a growing, meaning food growing community, address the gap in, what's really producible around here and what our people are used to producing, and the expectations that consumers have for the kind of variety and quality.
Right. Try to grow what does grow well and what people do want and will eat.
Right.
You can hear from me anytime. I think we need to hear from Sabella.
Well, I mean, there must be plenty of knowledgeable people around here that knows exactly what can be grown here, given that maybe you can do more season extension with the high tunnels. USDA has a lot of support for that currently, as you probably know, and with your greenhouses. So, it seems like there are, that information about what can grow here would be pretty accessible. And again, involving you've got a couple of great universities here, and I imagine that some of these studies are things that, if things are not known or you need more information, that could be available through some of the collaborations with universities. In terms of what people want to eat, I think we know you're not going to start producing mangoes here, for example, unless climate change, which really gets out of hand. But I think, part of it is, some of it is re-education. Maybe people really think they want, the pineapple we had at lunchtime, at breakfast time here, was pretty tasteless, frankly. No criticism to anybody who organizes, but, there are things that, once you start to get people exposed to more kinds of things, maybe they shift what they think the fruit they need in the wintertime is. Maybe they can move to a little bit more dried fruit. One of the other modalities that I've been seeing being pretty successful is the whole idea of U-Pick. I don't know if you have U-Pick operations here, but once people are getting out there themselves, they're saying, wow, these berries are amazing, so maybe I'll just get a whole bunch because I picked them myself, they're not so expensive now, and I'll freeze them myself for the winter. Other ideas are like churches come together and they support their own small farms. So I think building community, one of the key words that Michael said, is also very critical here. So without even talking about food systems and all that stuff, which a lot of people don't get at all, but that sort of idea that at the scale of the local business or the local community group or church, maybe they invest in a farm and help, do some of the picking and that sort of thing. So I think part of it's getting more people engaged in what can be grown here and maybe shifting a little bit their expectation of what they have to buy all year round.
Thank you, Sabella. Yes, and this has been great. I know we need much more time to cover this subject. But what I'd like is, I'd like everyone, and maybe we finish, I think we finish up with Mike, because it's his project and his deal, and I'd like him to put the capstone on. But if we have just about 30 seconds of anything you'd like to add, and then we'll have Mike finish this up. But thank you guys so much, and let everybody know where they can find you guys during the day and when you can. Are you staying after? Can you have time to chat maybe after this whole program's over this afternoon? Yeah, maybe not?
Lunch.
Gotta catch a plane? Lunch? Okay.
So the one thing I would add is there will be a temptation to create the public market with a couple of deep-pocketed individuals, or maybe a big government grant, or maybe a foundation and putting together a bunch of grants. Avoid all those temptations. I think the way to make this happen is to get every single resident here to buy a little piece of it, whether it's in a stock company or a co-op, because if people are bought in, they will come there because it's their marketplace, and they will be your best advertising force. If it's just a crown jewel created from someone else, those things are going to be much more difficult.
That's, I'd say, my definition of success is something that people feel like has always been there and belongs to them. And like in Pike's Place Market in Seattle, they're tiles with people's names on them. So you actually, like the tiles in Ivywild, you go and see a piece of yourself, or the kids who really, so it literally has got the handprint of many people from the town. So I think that's a great idea. Just one other piece, we're looking at the idea of a kind of food and agriculture fund, dedicated fund. Is that something we need? We've just completed a strategy for that. So looking at a range of different investment opportunities, from incubator farms to value-added processing and that kind of thing. So, I mean, that's, again, it pulls off of what Michael was talking about earlier. But, it seems to me that you really have the ingredients for great success here. I will say one more thing. Sometimes there needs to be a certain amount of organic growth. So the idea that you're not saying everything is going to be, to get it going, everything has to be done and completed. There may be some baseline that has to get done, and some part that you wait for another few months or year to see where does that need to go.
Larry, it's embarrassing for me to be blamed for this idea.
Oh, sorry.
So, this is a lot of people's idea. We've got a whole board, we've got a huge number of people that have provided input into this, and this is really a community project. And Dave Anderson and I actually talked about a new home for Ranch Foods Direct one time, maybe down in that Chrissy Fowler old ice house kind of area, and then from there it just kind of evolved into this idea of a public market and all of that. So I really think the timing's right now around food. I don't know how many of you heard the news from last week about UCCS giving canceling the contract with Sodexo and going in-house, like Rick Hughes did with District 11, and going to self-manage their food business. That is the best news, and congratulations to UCCS and all of the leadership that made that happen. But this is how much focus there is on local food systems, in all the health and the wellness that comes with it, and the benefit to the local economy and all of that. But one thing we've got to go out there and do, and that is get city leadership behind this project. We have to have city leadership. We are this city. We are this city. Not one person that runs the place is this city. We are this city, and we need city leadership behind this. And this project becomes a reality quickly if that happens.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody here. And listen,